For the first time in 4 months, natural gas has stopped leaking from a well in Southern California. The leak at Porter Ranch in Los Angeles began releasing methane and other compounds in October and caused several thousand residents to evacuate their homes. The local utility, Southern California Gas Company, announced on Thursday that the leak was capped for now. But there are questions about the health and environmental effects and the impact on property values downwind from the leak. Kelly McEvers, one of the hosts of NPR's All Things Considered, has been covering the story, and she joins me now from Los Angeles. So, Kelly, SoCalGas says that they have temporarily stopped this leak. So what's the state of this fix, and what happens next with it?
Well, the company that operates this gas storage facility says that the leak has been temporarily capped. What has to happen now is that state regulators have to go and inspect that and make sure that it is a solid cap, and then the leak will be sealed permanently.
So how hesitant or concerned are families about moving back in?
Right. So more than 5,000 families left this area near where this gas storage facility is. We talked to many of them. Some people are fine with going back. Some people are ready to go back. They're tired of living in hotels at the expense of the gas company, of course. But some people are hesitant to go back. We talked to one family whose little girl got very sick, and it wasn't from the methane that's being released. That's not what makes people sick, say public health officials. It's the other compounds that are inside a gas storage facility like this that can make people sick. But it can do things like rashes, cause respiratory diseases, and other complications. And so there are some families that just don't necessarily trust that this leak is capped and that the health effects from it are completely gone.
I understand that once it is permanently capped, the assistance that some of these families have been receiving will get cut off in about a week's time. Is that really enough time to make sure that everything's okay?
Right. I mean, that's 8 days that they're given. Once everything, again, once regulators say this cap is done, it's finished, and it's no longer leaking any gas, they'll get 8 days of assistance from the company. It's hard to say. Here's what public health officials and the gas company say. They say there are no long-term health effects from all of this gas that was leaking over the course of these months. So when people go back, that gas won't be leaking anymore. But I think the question that remains is, what are the effects of the gas that was leaking during that time? And although public health officials and the gas company say there are no long-term health effects, there are other researchers that say we actually don't know. In addition to the methane, there was benzene leaking and something called mercaptan. That's what gives us that smell that gas is leaking. That was what made people sick in the short term. But the effects of benzene over the long term, benzene is a carcinogen. And so researchers say we just don't have a lot of data on this kind of leak over this amount of time.
And what do we know about the environmental impacts of the leak?
We spoke to one researcher at Stanford University, and he said that the amount of methane being released was comparable to the size of a small country in Europe. And in a state like California that is spending so much money to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions. And when you're talking about something like methane, which is one of the worst greenhouse gases, this is a real setback.
Any sense of the economic impact in Porter Ranch and surrounding areas?
Well, there are a lot of lawyers now working with families who live in the area who are concerned about that very fact. People are very worried about their property values. There are some families, like I mentioned, who don't want to go back. But if they don't go back, they've got to think about what to do with their home. Once the gas company is no longer paying their rent, where do they live? There's a lot of families questioning how are they going to recoup the value of their home in an area where people probably don't want to live, don't want to buy a new house in Porter Ranch. And so it's a real concern.
All right. Kelly McEvers, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.